Let's take the phone calls now. 702-257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to Marge. Marge, you're first up. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Marge?
Hi, good morning. I saw the interview, and one of the other things that he said was that Chauvin was one of his training officers, and he compared to, Chauvin had, 22 years on the job, and the other guy had, 3 or 4 days?
Correct.
And this is kind of like the military, where you have to bow to your superiors, basically. So he had no basis to go on, and I agree with you.
It's chain of command.
Yeah, exactly. And the public, not only is it obstruction, but you get arrested, very easily by one of the other officers if you dare to jump in on the situation. The only thing I don't know, as far as protocol, is would that junior officer be able to call someone else, like at the police station or command post or whatever else, saying this is what's going on?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know. Everything happened fast, and I know people are going to say, what do you mean, Brian? It was 8.5 minutes. Well, the officer asked Chauvin a couple times, should we flip him over? Listen, and my understanding, by the way, is that Officer Thomas Lane was doing CPR on George Floyd when he was put in the ambulance.
Yeah.
I don't think Thomas Lane wanted this man dead or hurt. Marge, it's always good to hear from you. We really do appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you. Good comments. Thank you. Let's try to squeeze in one more call before we go to break. 257-5396. Steve, you're next on the Vegas Take.
Hey, what's up, Steve?
I just want to say that I was in the military, and so I understand the chain of command. It was that dude's 4th day on the job. He asked his superior at the time, which was Chauvin, should we stop doing this? That's all he can do. I don't think that dude, I don't think he should be charged with anything if it's all true.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, what Chauvin did was Chauvin.
Horrible.
And Lane did all he can do for being.
Can I ask you something else, though, sir?
I think what happened with Chauvin was it was personal.
Let me ask something.
I think he
well,
had.
We don't know if that's the case.
Well, I mean, they worked together for 10+ years at a nightclub in an interesting environment.
Okay, that's possible, but let me ask the caller this.
I don't know about that.
The Asian. Let me ask you this, sir. I only got about 30 seconds here, so quickly. The Asian man, the police officer that was standing alone. I think it's fair to charge him because he did nothing. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, if they have body cameras, I don't know. If the body cameras hopefully will come out soon. If he didn't do anything,
they will.
He's complicit, and he
okay,
should
good.
be charged.
We agree. Yeah,
but again, you could look at chain of command for that as well. What if he's outranked by Chauvin under those circumstances? And it's all variable based on the Minneapolis Police Department protocol as well.
We agree on that 100%. Thank you for the call, sir, and your service to this country. So this is the question I pose to the listeners right now. I'll open up the phone lines here. What do you think about this officer, Thomas Lane? 4th day on the job. You think he should have been charged? You think he should go to jail? We're learning some new information. His attorney, and that George Floyd resisted. Do you agree or disagree with me? Do you think that George Floyd, to an extent, you have to put some responsibility on him for putting himself in this situation, being on the ground to begin with? Your call's next, 702-257-5396. Take a quick break. Back right after this. All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. Glad you could join us on a Tuesday. Got a little teary-eyed there for a second there. I have to be honest with you. Joe Biden with some remarks at George Floyd's final funeral. I think he's having a private one tomorrow, but Joe Biden making some remarks, and I got to tell you, I was a little teary-eyed there. It was moving. Just the words that Joe Biden used, the empathy, and it was touching, and it's going on right now, actually. We're taking some phone calls, and we're talking a little bit.
So you're saying that George Floyd's having 3 funerals?
Well, there's some public funerals. There's a private funeral tomorrow, and they're having they had an opportunity, I believe it was yesterday, to give people an opportunity to say just the general public to say their goodbyes to him and pay their respects. So, yeah, it's obviously, as you know, a very public situation, and the family is grieving publicly because they have no choice. But we're taking some phone calls, and we're talking about Attorney Earl Gray, who represents one of the officers in this situation, and what we're talking about here is whether this officer deserves to be going to jail. His 4th day on the job. He said to Chauvin, the 22-year vet, shouldn't we turn his body over? Chauvin twice said no. Should he go to jail for that? My answer is no. I don't think this officer should go to jail. Now, we're going to learn more information, and I'm basing it on his attorney who saw his body camera footage. I don't think his attorney is lying. We're going to find out. We're taking your phone calls at 702-257-5396. Let's start off with Andy. Andy, you're up on the Vegas Take. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Andy?
Hey, guys. So it's very few and far between that I actually agree with you, Brian, but in this case, I mean, you are correct.
I'm hearing that a lot lately, sir. I'm hearing that a lot lately, sir. I'm just saying, but I appreciate that. All right, go ahead.
But the real question is if that is the case and this officer does get released or has no charges, what is going to happen after the fact? Is Black Lives Matter going to, basically riot all over the place, protest?
Well, that's a good point, and I'm on your side. Sir, it's a valid point that you ask, and I'm on your side, and I'll give you an example. How about the Michael Brown situation, okay? We learned in Ferguson that officer did absolutely nothing wrong. The forensics backed him up, and even the African-Americans that were witnesses to that shooting said that Michael Brown was charging at that officer. You think that police officer has been able to live his life normally again? But nobody wants to talk about that. They want to bring up Michael Brown like he's some sort of hero. Michael Brown was no hero. He attacked a police officer. He belonged 6 feet underneath the ground. He was a scumbag.
And do you know why that they want to bring up Michael Brown in that regard? Because of the color of his skin. That right there that you just described is the definition of racism. Backing someone only because of the color of their skin, despite the fact that they are, by all accounts, a horrendous human being. And a lot of that is happening right now with George Floyd.
Go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say, and that's what the BLM movement is all about. It's not,
Disagree. That's where you're wrong.
No, see, I know we talked about this the other day when I called in, but they are specifically just about Black lives, obviously. They do not, but it's only the ones that support their cause, which is police brutality against blacks only. They're not out there supporting the black officers that just died. They're not saying anything about that, who was, by the way, killed by another black man.
And that man was arrested by a police officer, by the way. Stephen Cannon, the 24-year-old who killed David Dorn in St. Louis during that pawn shop looting when he tried to steal a TV. Exactly. He literally murdered a 77-year-old guy over a TV. But he was arrested by a police officer.
I don't think any reasonable person would defend that man being brutally murdered and killed. I will say this. The Black Lives Matter movement started after Michael Brown. They're an organization that is dedicated to ending police brutality against minorities. Yes, you're right. But I don't think that we should take away from that situation because they don't take on other situations. I don't think that's fair, sir, to say, well, they only care about this, so they don't. No, well, hold on a second. I don't think it's fair to say because they're only protesting about police brutality. Well, hold on, let me finish. I don't think it's fair to say because they are talking about police brutality that is fair to also say because of that they don't care about every other black-on-black crime or that. Nobody is saying they don't care. They're just not protesting about that. They're protesting about police brutality. Does that make sense, sir?
Okay. No, I get that. But the thing is the title of their movement is Black Lives Matter.
Exactly.
Why do they have to have the word black in there?
Right. It looks like all black lives don't matter to Black Lives Matter.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I don't agree with that.
And God forbid, and like Drew Brees, God forbid, if you say all lives matter, then you're a racist.
Okay, first of all, I don't think – no, hold on. I don't think Drew Brees is a racist, but I have given him some flack.
I don't either.
Well, I think his timing was horrendous. He used terrible judgment. That is not the time when there are protests going on throughout the country to say all lives matter. You have to admit, sir, that he used –
But there's nothing –
What do you mean why?
Wrong with saying that.
You don't think – all right, okay.
When you say – hold on, I'm not looking to argue right now. It's just – I'm just saying
I disagree with you.
Mean every race, every
There's not one person out there – there's not one reasonable African-American out there that disagrees and thinks that only Black Lives Matter. That's not what they're saying. They're not saying only Black.
Come on.
Oh, really? Okay. So you think that?
Ridiculous.
No, I think you're being ridiculous.
You ask Al Sharpton that. Ask
Al Sharpton. So you think everyone?
He's
Okay.
a
So hold on a second.
racist.
See, that's where you sound ignorant. Okay. You don't want to argue. You think every. Excuse me. You think. Excuse me. You think every African American thinks like Al Sharpton? You sound like a dummy when you make a statement like that. Al Sharpton is a racist. He's an anti. Excuse me. Al Sharpton is anti-Semitic, and he's a racist. He does not represent every black person in this country. And by the way, the African Americans that are friends of mine feel the same way I feel, that Al Sharpton does not represent them. So for you to assume you sound like a dope, that every minority out there feels, yeah, really. You sound like a dope.
This has actually been a really good call, Brian.
KKK Klansman. That's coming. From a real-
So do I think you're a Klansman because the KKK is out there? So should I compare you to David Duke? Because that's what you're doing with Al Sharpton. Because
That's
David
all
Duke.
you ever do. That's
Oh, really? Okay. Well, you know what? You're an idiot. I'll say that. I don't know.
Do is name call because your
Well,
arguments are weak.
okay. You said my arguments are weak, and now you're saying that Al Sharpton represents everybody in the Black Lives Matter movement.
No, I
and
did
you're
not
saying
say
my
that.
arguments are weak? You sound like an idiot.
Once again, you put words into somebody.
Oh, so why did you bring up Al Sharpton? then? Tell us.
Brian, it does look like Al Sharpton is connected to Black Lives Matter.
Well, you're wrong.
When they have someone like him,
Well, you're wrong.
speak at George Floyd's funeral.
Black
Brian.
Lives Matter did not have.
Considering
excuse me.
the Black Lives Matter protests
Okay,
are all. I mean, the
excuse me,
spark.
again,
the spark was the police brutality
once
that
again-
George Floyd
Once again, what you said
had.
is not factually accurate. Black Lives Matter did not have Al Sharpton speak. I have no idea what you're talking about. It was the George Floyd family that had Al Sharpton speak. If you're going to say something like that, you have to be factually accurate. And this guy who called in, who brought up Al Sharpton, has nothing to do with the majority of the people that are protesting peacefully. He is the one that is saying my argument is weak. All I'm simply saying, sir, is that the Black Lives Matter movement, they're not saying that white lives don't matter. They're not saying that cop lives don't matter, blue lives don't matter. What they're saying is they want an end to police brutality. But you, sir, have no idea what you're talking about.
And what I'm saying is the name is very misleading to the country because there are black lives being taken every single day that are not being addressed by Black Lives Matter, and 2 black lives were taken because of the protests started by Black Lives Matter.
So let me respond to that.
And the riots and looting that happened after the protests.
Let me respond.
But those aren't being addressed either. So that makes the group look more anti-police and anti-white than pro-black.
I'm sure it breaks their.
And they lose a lot of credibility on a national level when they don't do things like that.
I'm sure it breaks their heart that you think they're misleading people.
I am one of
millions. If I can respond, please. I'm sure it breaks their heart that people like you are misled by their Black Lives Matter name. But I don't think they really care about what you think. I think what these people, many of them, care about is ending police brutality and the way that minorities are treated. They don't care if they're misleading people like you. What they do care about is it's a movement.
Okay.
And hold on, if I could finish. And they want some of the laws to change in this country, and they want some of the police training to change, and they want to be treated as equals.
Do you think that if Derek Chauvin was African American, that this large of a reaction would have taken place?
Well, I could tell you and respond that of the 4 officers, one of them is Asian, one of them is Hispanic, one of them is white, and one of them is black.
But he did not. The one that is African American did not have his neck or his knee on George Floyd's neck. Do you think that if Officer Chauvin, the one who was
the one that is African
all
American,
about,
is in jail right now?
I'm saying, but do you think that if Officer Chauvin was African American, that this reaction would be as aggressive as it has been?
Probably not. Probably
I don't
not.
think so either.
Probably not. But that has nothing to do with.
And I think a
where
lot
we're
of the
at
country
right now.
realized that too. And then it looks even worse. It looks more not just anti-police, anti-white, but also Black Lives Matter only when white police officers take their lives.
I don't believe that.
That's what is that's the presentation that a lot of the country is seeing right now based on what's all happening.
Well, I disagree with you a lot.
Especially with all the stuff that came out about Floyd. Floyd, by all accounts, was an awful human being, and his life wasn't turning around. He was high on fentanyl, and he had meth in his system.
Okay, well, I'm not going to sit here and say that white people are victims like you. I'm
not saying that either.
I am with the Black Lives Matter movement. I understand what they are all about, and I understand what they are doing. And for somebody to call up and to bring up Al Sharpton as if Al Sharpton represents the Black Lives Matter movement, that person just sounds like a complete dumbbell. 702-257-5396 is the number to call. That's like saying David Duke represents all white people. It's just ridiculous. Let's go to Andrew. Andrew, you're next on the Vegas Take.
Hey, what's up, Andrew?
Hi, guys. I appreciate your show.
Thank you.
Just wanted to touch on the defund police story, if I could. I kind of feel like it's being a little misreported in the press. I feel like the insinuation is that the idea is to abolish police.
I agree. I am so glad you brought that up. Yep. I know. Go ahead, sir. You are so right on that. It is a misleading what the media is doing. Very few people in this country, and you tell me if you disagree or not, sir, very few politicians in this country want to disband police. Now, they want to make changes. Doesn't mean they want to abolish. Right. You're absolutely right, sir. I agree.
Yes. And so I don't think the idea is to abolish the police. I think it's to reduce police forces that have become overstaffed, that have become, where the budgets for them are simply too big. I know in this city, every time I drive out, I see a lot of, fancy SUVs, multiple, 2-3 cars just sitting there sometimes. And it often looks like they're a little overstaffed, like they don't have as much to do as they need to. When people think about the police, they have to understand that the police are rarely catching crimes as they happen. They're almost always getting there after the fact. So I think we've just gotten to a point where we have a lot of cops riding around. We're basically being a little inefficient. We have too many cops riding around when the fact is they're not going to catch crimes.
Andrew, can I take it a step further, Andrew? And I understand where you're coming from, and I agree with you with the way media is portraying things. Andrew, here's what really frustrates me, right? You have one or two nut jobs that might be Democrats that are saying they just want to, get rid of the police altogether, for lack of a better term. And then you have a bunch of right-wing nut jobs on the radio that equate that to all Democrats don't want police. These people are so scummy, and they're liars, and these are nationally syndicated talk show hosts that think if one or two people, say something, all Democrats must feel the same way. Do all Republicans feel like Steve King? Do all Republicans call black people the N-word? Of course not. I would never make that correlation. But it's okay for the right, and it's okay for people that are right-wing talk show hosts and people on Fox News to assume that all Democrats want to disband the police when Joe Biden makes a statement yesterday saying he does not agree with that. He will not disband the police department. It is so important, sir, to make that distinction, and I am so glad you called and you brought that up, Andrew. Good to hear from you.
Good call, Andrew.
Thank you for the phone call. He's absolutely right.
Well, the police across the country, there needs to be reform, obviously. I think that's been established.
That's a big difference between reform and abolishing the police.
Well, but Minneapolis did bring up disbanding and abolishing the police, and that's the most extreme, and that's why I said that people in Minneapolis in power are radicals.
There are Republicans that are saying that all Democrats want to disband the police, and it couldn't be further from the truth, and it's a blatant lie.
Well, actually, Democrats were a little supportive of it. Then they walked that back once a national poll.
What Democrats were supportive of it?
Once a national poll came out, and it showed that 70% of America does not even want to defund the police, and only 15% agrees with
let me ask you
defunding them. That's not abolishing; that's defunding the police.
Okay. We're talking.
In fact, in a lot of cases, a lot of America wants to add more money to the budget, but change.
Besides what is going on in Minneapolis, can you name me one prominent Democrat that was for doing that throughout the country?
No.
Okay. Thank you. That's my point. That's the only point I was trying to make. 702-257-5396. And I'm glad Joe Biden, by the way, spoke out on his opinion on that yesterday.
Well, I mean,
let's go to Linda.
I could say Garcetti and de Blasio, but those were two mayors.
Yeah.
But it's just L.A. and New York, the two biggest cities.
Let's go.
Well, they don't want to disband.
They don't want to disband.
They use the word defund.
Defund, exactly.
Which just basically means you divert resources.
Minneapolis has been the only city that's discussed actual disbanding, but Garcetti and de Blasio do represent about 18 million people in the country. That's pretty big.
There are right-wingers that do nationally syndicated shows that did not use the term defund, disband. They are wrong, they are liars, and they are scum of the earth. 257.
They're not scum of the earth, Brian.
Yes, they
grow up.
What do you mean grow up?
I mean grow up.
What do you
I
mean?
mean, they're not scum of the earth, Brian.
So if you go on a national, okay,
I think it's you don't want to hear scum of the earth. I think someone who holds a gun to a pregnant woman's belly while her house is invaded is scum of the earth. I don't think that's someone who says what those two hosts said are scum of the earth. That's just way over the top.
All right, so I'll respond to that. That has absolutely what you just said has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
That's my definition of scum of the earth.
What you just
I'm
said
saying that ours are different.
Okay, well, clearly, I think if you're on a nationally syndicated radio show and you're a host and you intentionally lie and mislead people and you say things that are not true to make your base happy, you are a scumbag. I stand by everything that I said. There are those that do it locally here in Las Vegas, and there are those that have national shows that do it. And I stand by everything I said. When Tucker Carlson, the scumbag, says the idea of white supremacy is a hoax, and then when you have white supremacists that are trying to plow into a bunch of protesters who happens to be the head of the KKK clan in Virginia, Tucker Carlson's a scumbag. I want to go back to the phone calls. 702-257-5396. Let's go to Linda. Linda, you're next. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Linda?
Hey, I actually forgot why I was calling because of everything that's been going on. I forgot what the question was. I think it was about the police officer.
About the officer. Yes, ma'am. Just to refresh your memory. Yes, ma'am. Apologize for that. But we got into it a little bit there. Yeah. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess. But I agree with you, Brian. I don't think he should be charged. But if he isn't, I think that the protesters or / rioters, whatever you want to call them now, isn't going to be happy. They just want.
But Linda, can I bring this up?
Which is total BS.
Linda, can I bring this up because I think this is so important? That's why it's so important for this body camera footage to be released to the public now. Don't wait a month or two from now. Release it now. It is a disgrace.
And we can't have people thinking in the United States that if you riot and you loot and you cause problems and you make a giant commotion that the merits of the law can be changed, because if this guy is exonerated, it'll be based on the merits of the law, and that can't be just altered by one giant knee-jerk reaction by an angry group of people. And so that's why you brought up the fact, and I agree. If this does happen and this police officer gets off and doesn't get charged with aiding and abetting, we probably will see more protests and looting and rioting. And to me, that's a huge problem, because no one should be empowered to believe that you can literally change the law simply because you have more numbers than somebody else.
Well, I also take it a step further, though, and say that if this was not on camera and those innocent bystanders didn't video this, Chauvin would still be on the streets today. So it goes both ways. I'm sure you would agree with that, Linda, right?
Yeah, actually, and I also heard from the get-go, I don't know if you guys heard this or not, that the Asian police officer is his brother-in-law.
Correct. That is true. That is
so
true.
That was true.
And by the way, no longer, because that wife is filed for divorce, by the way.
Right away, right the next day. I don't know if it was because he maybe was an abusive husband all along, or she was.
Wouldn't shock me.
Life.
Listen. Yeah. All I know is this guy Chauvin's a complete scumbag. Linda, I agree with everything you said. He's had plenty of complaints in the past. Obviously, the guy was a Looney Tune who should have never been a cop in the first place, and it's a sad situation. Linda, I appreciate the call. Let's get back to the phone lines at 257-5396. Let's go to Suzanne. Suzanne, you're next up on the Vegas Take. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Suzanne?
Suzanne. Suze. What happened to you, Suze? Where did you go? 702-257-5396. Alex, you're next up. What's going on?
Hey, Alex.
Alex, are you there, my friend? We're having our daily issues with the phone lines, but that's okay. That's okay. Sean, who do we got next, man? Who's our next guy in the line? We got Ron. Ron, you're next up on the Vegas Take. What's going on, Ron? All right, we got Suzanne back on the line now. We're mixing up names here. Suzanne, thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
Okay, thanks. Love your show today, guys. Thanks.
I
wanted to give you another take on the BLM. Nigel Ellis was on TV and came out, and if you know him, he's head of a black organization. Forgive me, I forget the name of it. But he was talking about the origination of BLM came with LGBTQ, and it really is just being used as part of the progressive agenda to change the security of the United States and to ultimately get to the New World Order.
Well, I disagree with Niger. I disagree with him wholeheartedly, and here's why. Nobody heard of Black Lives Matter until after Ferguson. I mean, let's just call it for what it is. There was no Black Lives Matter until after Ferguson. And then after Ferguson, We heard some protesters say "fry 'em like bacon" in talking about the police department over there. I think some of the BLM, I think most of the people that are in a Black Lives Matter movement are good people. I think they want real change, but I also think they have to call out those who say disgraceful things like cops' lives don't matter and fry 'em like bacon. But as far as this guy Niger goes, I'll go back to what he said earlier. If he wants to state the case that this happened years before Ferguson, it's factually inaccurate, and he's not being genuine.
I do think there is a faction in Black Lives Matter that is very radical, and I think that we're seeing a lot of that with this looting and rioting.
Well, there's radical in every group, in every race, in every color, so I'm not going to attack Black Lives Matter because there are some radicals there. There are also some white supremacists in the world, too.
My issue with Black Lives Matter, and I've made this abundantly clear, that despite the fact that, every single protest, all this looting and rioting has been a result of Black Lives Matter protesting. So there's obviously a connection there. So there's some overlapping that's taking place. But my biggest issue is not recognizing the other things that are taking place all over the country, and especially David Dorn and David Underwood. These are two African-American police officers, black police officers that were killed because of the Black Lives Matter protests. And you don't even mention their names. To me, they lose a ton of credibility when they don't do that.
Okay, well, as I mentioned earlier, Black Lives Matter movement, they're all about police brutality.
But they're not with police officers.
That's also a ridiculous statement.
Actually, it isn't.
No, it is. That's a ridiculous.
It clearly isn't.
No, that's a ridiculous statement. There's no proof.
Then why did they not mention both their names?
I just explained it to you. The Black Lives, they're not for every cause. Their cause is black people and the way they're treated by law enforcement, and that is it. I don't know why you keep bringing up other things. They're not. That's not what their cause is for. Their cause is for that. Let's get back to the phone lines at 257-5396. Go to David. David, you're next on the Vegas Take.
Hey, what's up, David?
Hey guys, how you doing? JD, I want to try to sort of explain this to you. I think the difference, the reason, when you say, well, what about the black officer that was killed protecting the pawn shop? The difference is the person that killed him is going to be prosecuted. People that kill police officers, whether they're black or white, they're going to be prosecuted aggressively, and they're probably going to go to jail for the rest of their lives, as they should. So when you have on video time and time again violence against black people by police officers, and they don't get prosecuted at all, they don't even get charged sometimes, that's where that rage comes from. Where they're like, what about these?
Such a great point.
Of course. So that's
such
sort of
a great
point I want to make. There's a big difference there. That person that killed that officer protecting the pawn shop, he's already been arrested, thankfully, and he's going to be prosecuted aggressively, I'm sure. And I hope he goes to jail for the rest of his life, as he should. But
by the way,
difference right there.
Was Officer Chauvin's body cam off, and were all those officers' body cams off when that was taking place, or were they on?
My understanding, they were on, but
so we don't know then if they would have gotten prosecuted or in trouble if there was an outside video. We don't know that for a fact, right?
No, we don't know. But how many times?
Here's what we do know. Hold on. Here's what we do know. To what you're saying, caller, you are making complete sense to me. Here's what you're saying and what I'm saying to JD. If there weren't innocent bystanders on the sidewalk that were not videoing it on their cell phones, those 4 officers would be on the streets today. That is what the caller is trying to say.
I don't think that if those body cams were on the entire time, I cannot guarantee that that's true. No. Unless the body cam footage that we have not seen yet from before when apparently he was resisting is very egregious. We haven't seen that, and it's not being released for a reason. I would really like to see that body cam footage as well.
As someone who has covered some of these cases,
but good call.
Who has covered law enforcement for 20 years with a news reporter background, I certainly don't know everything, but I know enough to tell you.
Were you just flexing on? Was that a subtle flex, Brian?
If I could just finish.
You're subtly flexing on me.
If I could subtly finish my point, please.
Okay,
Thank
you can do that.
Midpoint. What I am trying to tell you is that I guarantee you 150% if there were not people on the sidewalk, innocent bystanders that were recording this, I guarantee you 150% there would be no body camera footage, there would be no arrest of these police officers, and history is on my side, and it is why it is almost impossible the last 40 to 50 years to arrest a police officer and hold them accountable for anything. I guarantee you we wouldn't be talking about George Floyd right now if not for the civilians that were on the sidewalk taking the video. And the caller makes a fantastic point. Thank you for that phone call. Coming up next, Lieutenant Eric Floyd from Metro Police. He is the president of the Injured Police Officers Fund. We're going to learn a little bit more about Officer Shea. He's the officer who was shot in the neck last week. How is he doing? An update on that and what you can do to help Officer Shea. Coming up next, Lieutenant Eric Floyd. You're listening to the Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDAWN.